Good morning. Pavina, I must say that I agree with Mark Twain in terms of Mauritius and the relationship with heaven. And I want to say that the big heart of the people of Mauritius, your natural wealth, and the beauty and diversity of your culture are unmatched. And so it is with huge pleasure that we are here today, and we are most grateful for the warm welcome that has been extended to all of us since our arrival, and indeed, the warm welcome that we always get from you, Mr. Lal, and your very able team, led by our very own Pavina, because we also feel that we have a huge piece of Pavina as ATAF, and so we hope that the next 2 days will be a time for us to reflect on all the things that Mr. Lal has just said, because it is critical for us to reflect on those as people who have been charged with the welfare or the well-being of Africans through the work that we do. So, Honorable Minister, thank you so much for gracing the occasion, and indeed all the invited guests. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, from its inception, ATAF prioritized tax reform in addition to national capacity building initiatives. When I was listening to Mr. Lal, I was wondering, what am I going to say about ATAF? Because he said it all, and he said it better than me. But I want to say that consistently, ATAF is guided by its firm belief that effective tax policy is critical for global and Africa's development agenda. This is the reason behind ATAF's recognition by the AU as its primary partner on taxation in Africa, having steadily demonstrated capacity and zeal to contribute to the realization of the global development agenda contained in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the African Agenda 2063 when we come closer to home. As we enter our next decade, as Pavina said and as Mr. Lal said, ATAF has identified core principles for enhancement as well as new areas of focus, all feeding into the two development agendas. So what's ATAF's role in the global landscape? Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the world continues to evolve at all levels, politically, economically, socially, dictated by different factors, some negative and others positive. Overall, the world of tax has become more complex and dynamic over the last 10 years, with an increasing focus on transparency, digital taxation, technology, and so on and so forth. So indeed, the fourth industrial revolution, characterized by technological advancements, the geopolitical dynamics complicated by a world that consistently is seeing a shift from a unipolar to a multipolar setting, shifting global economic dynamics, evolving tax policies, all beg for tax reforms to sustain development agendas both at a global, regional, and the national levels. So please allow me to share some of the key trends without taking too much of your time. The first one being the rising importance of taxation of the digital economy, and I will not really belabor my point because Mr. Lal has really done justice to that. But I want to say that with the growth of the digital economy, many countries are introducing new tax rules to ensure that digital businesses are paying the right fair share of tax. At a global level, the UN and OECD have both commenced reforms, though at different levels, and this will form our discussion in the next session, so I will not belabor the point. I just want to concentrate on what ATAF has done, and we have always stated that global tax reforms must take into account the allocation of taxing rights and profit allocation between residents and source jurisdictions. And as Mr. Lal rightly put it, very little has been gained thus far. And we all remain to see what will happen. So that is why we as ATAF will continue to press for greater and more fundamental changes to address both the concerns that Africa continues to have on this, and indeed on the IFS, as Mr. Lal indicated. To illustrate our commitment, Honourable Minister, and relating to that Pillar 2 is what I would like to use as an example, that as Mr. Lal talked about the pillars, I won't belabor this, but I want to specifically address the issue of Pillar 2 and some of the solutions that we have tried to come up with as ATAF. ATAF has developed a suggested approach for enacting a domestic minimum top-up tax with the rationale of raising domestic revenue, but also demonstrating Africa's capacity in leadership in this area, and lastly, helping countries to reassess or reappraise excessive tax incentives. So it is our hope that that will go a long way in helping countries. And many other areas. The second area, of course, is the focus on international tax transparency, the use of technology, and so on and so forth. So the above areas show the weight that we all have to carry, and this could not be done without the help of these country correspondents, because they determine the needs that we then go to address as ATAF. But a key area that has been absent, Honourable Minister, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me, is the policy area, the policy direction of the continent in the tax debate. And it is really a huge pleasure that you're here this morning, because we hope that the presence of yourself and your colleagues will help guide this effort that we have all been doing, and I hope that we will continue to do with the help of the country correspondents. So in terms of the work that we have done, allow me to please share with you, distinguished participants, the few things that ATAF was able to do in 2022. In terms of providing capacity, we convened 28 training programs, attracting over 2,054 participants from 48 countries. We conducted 113 cross-border technical assistance missions in 20 countries, and we created what we call a rapid response unit that directly addresses issues in countries to enable them collect revenue. And Mr. Lau already talked about some of the achievements that we've gained in terms of revenue collection, so I will not belabor the point. So what is the role of the country correspondents, and what do we expect in terms of expectations to even continue to do better work? Primarily, it is to advance the strategy that Pabina so ably talked about in the new decade, where we hope we can even bring on board a couple of new areas, including Mr. La, the idea that was talked about a while back on regionalization, where ATAF takes services closer to members. And so we hope that some of these strategic areas will be the focus of country correspondence, the use of big data analytics, the introduction of an African Tax Academy, and so on and so forth. And so, as I conclude, I want to say that the expectations from ATAF and the expectations from country correspondents cannot be divorced, because we work as a team, and if one fails, the other fails, and if one wins, the other wins. So if we know the needs of our members, and that is actually ATAF's niche, then we will provide responses that are adequate. And so as I conclude, I wish to say that to achieve effective domestic revenue mobilization on the continent, the organization must be agile, responsive, and proactive in addressing the evolving needs of African revenue administrations. By continuing to prioritize capacity building, innovation, knowledge sharing, partnerships, and advocacy, ATAF shall play a critical role in supporting domestic revenue mobilization in Africa while promoting sustainable economic growth and development. Together, let us use the next 2 days to work out how best to attain this. Thank you, and may God bless you.